So I thought I would come on here. I haven't done a live in quite some time. And I just wanted to briefly touch on a topic that's, well, I think a lot of people don't really understand fully, and that is the topic of love and what it means, what I think it means. I was going to do this on my YouTube, but my iPad's running out of memory, so I'm just going to do it on here instead. You know, I think when we grow up, we have this naive perception of what it means to be in love, or to be loved, or to love someone. You know, we have this very kind of, you know, a lot of us in the West grew up with this sort of very fairy tale, like Disney, you know, this sort of euphoric kind of sense that, you know, love is this or what we consider to be love is this kind of, you know, glorious, happy experience 24 hours a day, and that it's going to be, you know, we'll just be happy if we find the right person. We'll be happy if we, you know, can get, if we can convince a girl or a woman. Sorry for the coughing, but got a bit of a dry throat. If we can just, you know, I remember when I was younger, like, I had this kind of notion that love meant, you know, giving someone compliments, or being sort of poetically romantic, or I don't know, giving someone flowers or chocolates. And I remember doing that at school when I was as a teenager. I remember it was the last I liked, and I think I got her some like chocolates and maybe some flowers, and you know, I was trying to be all romantic, and you know, I guess it kind of came off as a bit cringy and a bit creepy probably at the time, which I wasn't trying to be, but I thought that's what it took to get the attention of some, you know, a female. I thought that's the way I've got it. I need to go about it if I was to get the girl I wanted to be with, kind of thing. And you know, of course I was younger then, and I didn't understand what I know now. You know, the benefit of hindsight, the benefit of time, the benefit of maturing, of wisdom. You know, as we all deal with, you know, nobody's perfect. No one's, you know, it's essentially it's an open book. As a child, as a teenager, you don't know what the hell you're doing. You don't know anything about life yet, but you like to think you do. And it doesn't. I think it doesn't help that we, like I said before, we attach ourselves to these kind of, you know, like I said, this kind of like fairy tale story perceptions of what we think, you know, what we think affection is, what we think it is to be, you know, supportive and to show that we love someone. And I think it's only as you get older and you start experiencing, as an adult that is, you know, being with someone and actually having a real relationship with someone, that you realise that that's not necessarily, that's not to say that those things can't be useful and can't serve you well sometimes, because they can, but I think we've got to, you know, I think we have to accept that from a human nature point of view, really, I think a lot of love, if you can even call it that, it's a transaction, really. It's a trade-off. It's compromise. You know, it's a kind of supply and demand type situation. I think, really, more than anything else, it's I'll do this for you if you do this for me. I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine, kind of situation. And the moment you break away from that kind of unspoken contract kind of thing, the unspoken laws of love, or whatever you want to call it, I think it's an overused word, actually, to be honest. And I'm not trying to sound bitter or resentful or anything. I'm not saying I am, but I don't. I just think that we look at it in the wrong way. We see what we want to see. You know, we believe what we want to believe about people, because it's more comforting to than facing up to the realities of what we probably know deep down to be the case. You know, like that's not just in relationships. That goes with friends. That goes with your own family. You know, that goes for co-workers. You know, whatever it is. You know, the reality often is not very nice, you know, and we don't often want to be honest with ourselves about it. Or we live in this kind of, you know, a lot of us live our lives in denial about who we are, what we can and can't do. You know, we live our lives and our relationships in our heads, really. You know, we're kind of dictated to by our own egos. And so we go into friendships, we go into relationships, into jobs, careers with certain expectations, and over time people realise that those expectations aren't going to be met, or haven't been met, and aren't going to be met. And that's where you start to have problems. That's where things start breaking down, because maybe you didn't communicate those expectations out of fear that, you know, things you're going to kind of put yourself in a tricky spot, or get yourself into some messy, you know, just a messy, some, you know, awkward, difficult conversations with people. And what happens then over time is that you start to become disillusioned, you start to become demoralised, you start to become depressed, because you realise, you know, maybe this is not for me, maybe this is not the right path, maybe this is, I'm deluding myself, I'm being naive. And you just land up in a place where you just start thinking to yourself, you know, maybe I've got to get away from this, you know, maybe I've got to start over, start afresh. You know, it's like, how many people out there, men and women, have been up at night staring at the ceiling thinking to themselves, what the hell happened to me? What the hell happened to my life? Why is my life the way it is? What did I do? What did I not do? What could I have done better? You know, all of this self-doubt and negative self-talk starts creeping in, and it just becomes a negative cycle. Because we deluded ourselves early on about, we place too many demands on people. You know, we expect other people to give us the things that we crave, and really deep down that's not right, it's not reasonable, it's not fair. I mean, of course, you know, no one's living a perfect life. We all want something out of this world. We all want something out of our lives, and that's fair enough. But I think when it's, you know, when we start to place those demands on other people, especially if we haven't communicated those things, then you're really just setting yourself up for failure. And I think ultimately that's what I've done, really. You know, I did that. I put myself in a situation where, you know, I was seeking validation. I was seeking something unrealistic, really. You know, I was trying to get something that really only I could get from myself. And that's really why relationships often don't work out. That's why marriages don't work out, because, you know, we want to feel certain things. We want to believe certain things about ourselves. We want to, and what we end up doing is escaping from ourselves by distraction. That's how most people live their lives. whether that's in relationships, seeking out friendships, being dedicated to your job, you know, being a workaholic, you know, being money orientated, you know, being materialistic, whatever it is. We all go through phases of kind of like temporary addictions, really. And that's because life is unfulfilling for most people. You know, life might not be bad, but it might not be. It doesn't give you energy. Yes, compared to a lot of people in the world, you could say life's not that. It's not that bad, but you know, when you start looking at it on a deeper level, you think to yourself, well, yeah, it might not be bad, but it's dull, it's boring, it's tedious, it's repetitive, it's not going anywhere. Whether you're married, in a relationship, whether you're single, whatever it is, whatever situation you are in life. You know, how many of us spend hours and hours and hours online, on social media, like myself, you know, distracting ourselves from ourselves. Because we don't like staring at ourselves in the mirror. We don't like what we see. We don't like facing up to who we really are. We don't like seeing the insecurities, the inadequacies, the incompetence, the shame, the guilt, the regrets, the fears. But instead of working on ourselves, what do? We go looking for other people to fix ourselves. That's why marriages end. That's probably a direct. There's probably a direct link with that, you know, because we go seeking solutions in other people that don't have the answers, that can't fulfill us in the ways that we need. They can't give us what we want. And that's another thing, is we live our lives in this state of want all the time rather than what we actually really need. You know, especially a lot of young men, they go into relationships because they're attracted physically to women. You know, they want the sexual energy, the tension, the activity, but deep down, underneath all of that superficial stuff, it's often the case that those men are lonely. They're lonely, they're unfulfilled in life, and they just wanted the attention. Yeah, of course, they're attracted to the women, but really it's that thing of distraction again. It's that thrill of the moment, you know. It's the thrill of just sort of feeding your own ego, really, at the end of the day. That's all good and well when you're young, and I don't, you know, I certainly did a bit of that when I was younger as well, and it's, you know, it's just a part of, and a lot of women do the same thing as well, so it's just a part of nature, I think. But I think as you get a bit older, as you get out of your naive early to mid-20s, and you start to become an adult, and you start to learn more about life and yourself and your past and everything, and you know, the deep ingrained issues that you've got going on and you've had for years. You start to wake up and you start to smell the coffee more. You start realising, you know, it's you know, who am I to put obligations on other people? You know, nobody else is accountable for me. You know, nobody else should be put in a position where they're, you know, kind of feel that they're responsible for your unhappiness, kind of thing. It's like, well, how is that right? And so I just think, and I think, like I said, it's just that if love does exist, it's rare. But I just think that overall, most, when I say relationships, I mean, I'm not talking about those first, that honeymoon period where all your emotions are sky high and it's, it's very kind of, that kind of like romantic sort of movie-like type love. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you're past that, when you, that's great, that's wonderful. And I hope everyone can have that. I had it, and it's great, it's wonderful, but it wears off. That's not real life. That's just the, there's a reason why they call it the honeymoon period. That's all gonna great, but then reality hits at a certain stage, whether it's after 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is. And slowly but surely you start to see that actually the person is so kind of obsessive over for so long and so sickly in love with, if you want to call it love, because I don't think it is, but you just really, it's a selfish period really in many respects, because you're just driven by your own emotional highs rather. Yes, of course you do like the other person, but it's because of how you feel. It's more of an internal experience than it is an external. But it's just a transition. It's a temporary phase. It's like buying a new car or a house or, I don't know, whatever it is you want. A new phone, some new clothes. It feels great for a while, but then, over time it kind of, those emotions, those thoughts, feelings dissipate, and you're back to normal again, and that's what happens in relationships and marriages. Those first few years were fun, energetic, passionate. You're getting all the sex you want, you're getting all the attention you want, but it's often a trap. And what I mean by that is you're trapping yourself. You're caught up in this whirlwind, this tornado of emotions that you don't really want to get out. But it's probably not good for you in the long run. But you get caught up in it. It's like an addiction. And just at a certain point, slowly but surely, you wake up and you see the real person. You then have to make a decision whether you want to continue that connection with someone, even though the emotions that you thought were going to be with you for the rest of your relationship, marriage, whatever, aren't going to be there, or not that often. You see, that's what happens. You see, that's the nature of, that's the fleeting nature of. You see, that's what people think love is. People think that honeymoon phase, that's the definition of love, and unfortunately, you might say that's a part of it. Let's say. But it's just that it's a temporary stage, really. It's the stage of it that gets you into the. I guess it's an evolutionary kind of trait, I suppose, of bonding and of kind of trust and connecting you to someone, probably in the past for reproductive purposes. And it's just something that's lingered with us all of these hundreds of thousands of years later. So it serves a purpose, but this modern liberalised you can kind of do whatever you want, whenever you want, anything goes, anything's accepted now, world that we live in, you know, people get bored after, once the honeymoon phase disappears, people are like, oh, I thought that was what love was, and then they realise 2 years in, 5 years in, 8 years in, that's not coming back. People, you know, they cling on to this hope that that's going to come back, and it can do in small, fleeting moments. It can, you know, there are things that can happen in a relationship that can, you know, kind of spark that flame again in certain ways, but it doesn't happen very often. You've got to have your own independent lives. You've got to have time away from each other. You've got to be honest and open and humble with each other. You've got to be able to accept that there are some things that other person's never going to be able to give you. You might want them. You might want it all you want, but you're not going to get it. You know, and that's the thing, is it's over time it becomes more of a. It just becomes, like I said, it becomes more of a transactional deal. Really, it becomes more like a kind of a business package, a business deal, you know, a contract, a formula, you know, a structure, whereby, you know, there's a hierarchy, there's a kind of, you know, there's certain obligations you have to meet to get something. And it just becomes more about servitude, which in some ways can be a positive thing. It can be fulfilling in a way, but I think also it just feels like a kind of employer type kind of, if you're not careful, you know, there's always going to be one that wears the trousers and one that doesn't. There's always going to be one that has, you know, certain leverage than the other person. There's always going to be someone that has more advantages or takes more liberties. There's always going to be someone that gets away with certain things more than the other person for whatever reasons. You know, there's always going to be the one that's the more kind of alpha of the two. Now, and that goes for all relationships, all friendships even. You know, there's the one that tags along. There's the one that's the proactive one, the one that leads, and those that follow. That's just human nature. So you get to this point where you start to say to yourself, you know, is this healthy? Is this right for me anymore? Is this what I want? You know, do I want to continue jumping in and out of relationships? If this is the reality of it, regardless whoever it is that you like and you want to be with, and it becomes this kind of, you know, tug of war kind of match between your emotions and the logical, rational part of your brain. It's like, you know, maybe this is not good for you, but then the other side of your brain is like, well, you know, let's just give it a shot. It feels good. It's blah blah blah, and it becomes a nightmare. It becomes this constant dilemma of like, do I stay or do I go? Do I stay or do I go? And I think over time, what happens, especially with a lot of men, and also a lot of women, especially when children are involved, is they become institutionalized. Essentially, you know, they become codependent. They become attached to people, excessively so, and it becomes hard to get out of it. It becomes hard to leave. And so what you end up with over time are couples that are together, not because they really love each other or even particularly like each other anymore, but they stay together because it's comfortable, it's familiar, you know, it's better than the alternatives probably for a lot of people. But it's just because people don't want to change, that they're scared to take a step forward into the unknown. You know, they're scared to just, it's hard, it is hard to change. It's hard to break away from something that you've known for years. That becomes a habit. It's hard to break out of habits. I should know. You know, do you continue to tolerate a life that's not really giving you anything anymore and hasn't been for years? Or do you stay with the hope that things are going to change at some point, but there's no guarantee of it? And of course, yes, some of that is on you, is down to yourself. You know, it's not all about the other person. You know, of course, you have to at some point stand up and be a man, you know, or be a woman and say, no, I'm an adult, I've got to sort this stuff out myself. It's my life. It's on me, really. But sometimes you need support. Sometimes you need guidance. Sometimes you need advice. Sometimes you need a little bit of wisdom from people. Because it can feel, it's easy to get lost. It's easy to get lonely and to get isolated and to become a recluse. Again, talking from personal experience. You see, to me, that's not what love is. I don't think love should be this servitude, this kind of slave-like kind of existence, you know, where you feel obligated to do this or this or this to try and make the other person happy. You should be doing it anyway. If you really genuinely love someone, you'll do it anyway. Not because you feel obligated to, but you see him with resentment under your breath because you have to do certain things. Well, I'm sorry, but that's the reality of it. And if you don't want to have that life, then get out of it. You know, if you're not doing things for someone because you want to do them, then you've got issues. If you're doing things because you're expecting a certain outcome, you have a certain number of, you know, potential things that you want to happen because you're doing certain things, then that's problematic. You know, you shouldn't be doing. If you really truly love someone, you will do things because you want to do them, not because you're expected to do it or because you're hoping that there'll be some nice, positive, happy outcome by way of doing certain chores or bringing money in or whatever it is. That's not love. That to me is not. That isn't what love is. I don't really know what love is, but if there is love, that version of it is not. Doesn't sound very healthy to me. Doesn't sound like you're going to get much longevity out of it. Because one of the other person's going to have some resentment underneath the surface. Might all be smiles and laughs, but you know, you sit down and have a deeper conversation with them and you realise, yeah, this person's not. And I'm not like projecting everything here. I just wanted to mention these things because I've seen it. You know, I've experienced some of it myself, but also I've seen it so many times, and it's just a part of it. Just especially with younger men, you know, even middle-aged men, they're just there at every beck and call, you know, kind of scraping from the bottom of the barrel kind of thing, you know, eating the crumbs from the table just so they can get a fucking bit of attention once in a blue moon, it's just as one example. It's like, you know, treating their woman as if she's some kind of, you know, fucking queen or princess or something. It's like, and the guy gets fuck all from it, gets nothing in return. Because you see, at the end of the day, it's not about it's not about what you look like in the long term. Yeah, of course, that's obviously a part of the process of attracting a mate. Of course, that's why physical features, physical traits are an evolutionary bonus, because it meant that reproduction would be the end result. And that's all good and great, otherwise none of us would be here. But, you know, I just think that, you know, of course, over time those looks fade and disappear. And it's a false premise, it's a false, you know, it's like, I just don't think that most people do love each other. I think they love a version of that person that they've built up in their head initially, that they realise then isn't, over time, that's not actually that person. You know, we get hoodwinked by illusions, self-deception, because we want to believe in something. We want to believe that this love thing is a real thing, and I don't really think it is, actually, for the most part. I really don't. You know, the only real true loves in this world, in my opinion, are between parents and their children, and even then, that's not always even true, genuine love, because even then that can be all sorts of bullshit going on there. And of course, you know, underneath the surface, there's all sorts of taboos and, you know, unspoken truths and dark thoughts that people never say but are thinking about, have thought about, or that they never tell you about, but they actually genuinely believe and think and feel. So you never really know what to believe. You never know who you can really trust anyway. I just think you've got to be very careful to not land yourself in a kind of maze of circling, cyclic, you know, dark, negative thoughts. Because it's so easy to go down that rabbit hole. It's so easy to go down that path of just becoming eternally confused and lost, and just becoming kind of disassociated with yourself, with reality, and disillusioned with everything, where you end up in a place where you're just like, I don't know what to believe anymore. I don't know what to feel about things anymore. You might call it an awakening, maybe. An epiphany. A light bulb comes on moment, where you realise that you've been living a lie. You've been sold a lie. You sold yourself a lie, and you allowed yourself to buy into it for years. Just getting older and wasting time, precious time at that. Finite time that you're never going to get back. Be careful be careful of what you want in this world, man. As they say, be careful what you wish for.